call this session of the Board of Revision to order. We begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. With me on the panel today are Maurice Cadillan, Laurie Davidson, and I am Mark Boreski. Our secretary today is Huda Aziz, and the assessor is Matthew Barokas. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised, the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may be. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Could you please put your phones on silent or turn them off? We may resort to phones for information with my approval.
Would you like to affirm or swear?
Please affirm.
Please state your full name.
Matthew Brooks.
And do you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Would you like to swear in or affirm?
Swear.
Please state your full name.
And
And do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We are dealing with apartments today. Are we dealing with any matters other than value? No. Nope. Strictly value. Okay. Then let us turn to the first one on the docket, which is 461 Cumberland Avenue.
Good.
Mr. Brokus, whenever you are ready.
Sounds good. Okay. File number 19-2216, roll number 130527, 3100, 461 Cumberland. Assessed value $7,773,000. There's a small tax exempt. It's a not-for-profit daycare. That value is not being contested, so I'm not gonna dwell on it. It's an apartment, one building, 7 stories, 1986, 72 suites, 18 outdoor parking spots downtown. Construction class C masonry, repairing walls. Page 2, you see that they've handed in their mailers just fine. It's run by Winnipeg WHRC, Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation, and you can see that when we get to page 9, there's a large mortgage and tax subsidy. So, I mean, this place, it's rent geared to income, so we use, pardon me, we use just model parameters for everything for that reason, because the actuals can't be taken as an example of what a private investor would expect to spend. So our breakdown on page 3, you see out of the 70 suites, there's 26 1-bedroom, 31 2-bedroom, and 13 3-bedroom. Average monthly rent we have is $983. So you'll see the 2 income streams. The parameters are modeled with a 5% cap rate as per age, area, and size. Page 4 shows comparables around. Got 430 Webb, 92 Princess, 15 Carlton, 45 Carlton Street. So we are below the properties nearby. From what I remember, 92 Carlton has been, 92 Princess rather has been fixed up, so I wouldn't put any weight on that one.
Which one?
92 Princess, comparable number 2. I don't think, we're not too far apart on the income side of the coin here, so I'm not gonna dwell on it too much. Comparables are a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units other than 13, so the comparable number 3, 15 Carlton Street, which has 3 and 4 bedroom units as well. Yeah, the comparable leases are on page 5, I won't dwell on that. So we've got our cap rates, page 6 and 6A. So we've got our cap rates are on page 6, and then on 6A, we've got some examples of sales in the 3rd table down. The purpose is just showing individual cap rates to illustrate the accuracy of the model, substantiate the model derived cap rates. They're not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. These are just examples of properties that we've looked at, we've stabilized, and now these aren't all of them, but the ones in this table, they range from 4.03 to 5%, including triple 3 board, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing. And then page 8, 9, 10, that's the mailer. You'll see right at the top there, they have a large Manitoba Housing Mortgage and Tax Subsidy on it. So model parameters were used on this. We didn't feel there was a need for an adjustment. Last time around, it was confirmed at $7,168,000. Today we're looking at $7,773,000. And then you have the red roll, which follows the mailer here. Pardon me. And then at the end of my brief, page 26, 27, 28 are some pictures of the subject property. That's my next thank you.
Navarro, do you have a question?
Yes. Would you say that this is all model generated?
Yes.
Okay. And does the model account for any differences in terms of the investment risk for a property such as this owned by WHRC versus the market, your average market property?
No.
Okay. Can you tell me why?
Well, a private investor would buy this. I'm not sure what risk you're referring to.
Okay, you're aware of the actual expenses for this property, are you not?
Yep.
Now, we went through this, of course, we adjusted for the rent, because the rent is not that market. But the expenses were taken from the property itself, giving us an actual, I'll go into it in my brief, but the maintenance per suite, maintenance and repair per suite, it's actually quite high. And this is something that's actually quite visible in a lot of social housing, where the subsidy doesn't actually cover any type of capital costs that most private sector apartments would, dedicate a reserve to. This is not present, so wouldn't the investor recognize that when they purchase it and realize that they're going to have to spend a little bit more money than they would on your market apartment that actually has been kept up?
No, we look at when calculating NOI, like this is more of an atypical situation, just in regards to it getting a subsidy, so we go with just straight market. But in terms of calculating net operating income, we just look at the expenses that are in place at that time. Now, buildings do eventually have capital repairs that are needed, exteriors, roofs, but we look at those at that time. But in terms of repair and maintenance, large capital expenditures do not fall under that category.
And in general, that is your position for all social housing?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Mr. Terrier, do you have any questions?
Did you inspect this property?
I haven't had the opportunity to inspect any properties.
None today?
None today.
None today, or the comparables?
None of the comparables either.
Okay. The vacancy, are you aware of what the situation is for, on vacancy here?
The current vacancy situation, well, it says, I think it's pretty full. It says they've got 14,000 in vacancy, and their market rent they have is $368 potential, but then they have a subsidy, so it is hard to tell because it is a different situation. And if if it opened up to like the open market, it could be a situation where the vacancy may change up or down just because it's a unique situation.
Yeah, I was trying to see what the fluctuations were, so that's why I was asking the
Yep.
question on the vacancy rate. Okay, so, but that's model and that's it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions at this time.
Would a potential buyer be subject to the leases that are in place, and those leases would carry on as subsidized leases? In other words, the prospective buyer's income would be lower than if this was not a subsidized housing project?
I mean, that would be between the buyer and the vendor, but what we're looking at here today is that we're looking at open market, arm's length transaction for profit value. That's what we're looking at here.
But they're buying a property that has leases in place, and those leases are subsidized, correct?
Yes.
That's why you're
The-
going to model rather than the
Correct.
actuals.
Yes.
Because it's relatively low.
Yes, definitely. And
How
we'll
long are those leases?
If you look at my rent roll here, page 11 onwards, looks like they're year-long leases, and you can see the rent starting on page 11, 431, 483, 662. Like I think it depends on the kind of income they're getting. There's some that are in the 300 range. This isn't market value for 1986.
So, I guess my point is it conceivable that a buyer of the property would be able to turn it into a more normal profit-generating property relatively easily or not?
Relatively easily. Well, what we're looking at today is that very value. So, I haven't been part of any of those sorts of deals, so I can't comment either way, to be fair.
Meaning that you're not aware of sales that have occurred where there has been a conversion then from social housing to.
There's that big property on Smith, right? They're gutting it and renovating it, so there's clearly an idea that there's enough demand. I just did a whole docket on Tuesday of properties on Smith Street, high rises with low vacancy, renovated, so there seems to be something that the market is acknowledging.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Navarro, your evidence?
Sure. I'll start with page 2 of the brief. This is the property at 461 Cumberland. over, you can see in relation to Edmonton Street, Cumberland, Notre Dame. If you turn to page 5, we've chosen an effective gross income of $792,739, vacancy of 4%, expenses of 50.8% or $413,005. That's $1,488 per suite. Net operating income of $379,734. And as the assessor said, there's not much of a difference in terms of the net operating income on this property. The difference lies in the capitalization rate. So if you turn to page 6 of the report here, you can see how we've laid out the capitalization rates, and you'll see the difference from 2018 to 2020. Now, this is a property built between 1986 and built in 1986. So you can see the purple chart at the right-hand lower corner. We've stratified it based on age here, so pre-1946, 1946 to 1959, 1960 to 1979, 1980 to 97, and 98 plus. So the standard rate for a building that we use for 1980 to 1997 is 5.75. And if you turn to the appendix, the first page of the appendix on page 9, you'll see the workup for this property. So you can see that we've added a half point or 50-point increase on this, and that is what we call the social housing factor. So just to get into the capitalization rate and risk, the chair asked a question to the assessor regarding leases and leases in place. So this is how social housing works. Social housing typically has an agreement on it for a fixed period of time. So these agreements can last between 35 and 45 years. Now during that time, the property really can't be sold. Leases are in place to provide social benefit to those who don't have access to housing. Now once the actual agreement runs out, generally these agreements were funded by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They're free to sell. So I believe 185 Smith is one of those situations where the actual mortgage ran out and the government was in the position to sell that property. At this point, this property is not in that position. So any potential purchaser would be faced with the same issues of having to keep those rents in place during that period until such time as the actual mortgage would run out. However, the clauses within those agreements actually do not allow for these organizations to actually sell these properties. So until such time as the agreements actually run out, there's not much that can be, they can't be sold. Simple as that. Now that is actually a large policy matter for the province and provinces across Canada as to what to do with these properties once the mortgages expire with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Some provinces are electing to refund these properties and keep them going, again to provide that social benefit to people in need of housing. And some are choosing to sell these assets off if they can. 185 Smith happens to be one of those strategic locations that's right in the heart of the downtown. You can see why, as an investment, and selling it would actually might be a good strategic move for the province. Not all of these properties are located in locations like that. There is quite a bit in the downtown. I mean, if you notice, if you're familiar with the Central Park area, there's a lot of social housing in there. In fact, most of the properties in there are actually owned by the Manitoba Housing Renewal Corporation. So what I would say is that getting back to some point, the point that I was making originally when I was asking the assessor questions, in a typical situation, in a market situation, an owner reserves a certain amount of money for capital repairs. That goes into the property every once in a while. It's there to actually maintain the property, and by saying maintain, those are the big ticket items, the roof, the mechanical systems, things like that actually cost a lot of money to upkeep. Those are the things that these properties lack, is that capital reserve. And that puts the property at risk, because if you don't have the money to fix the roof or fix the mechanical system, it's just gonna keep adding and adding to the problems with these types of properties. And the only way that these things are actually ever addressed is when the federal government comes in and puts X amount of dollars to social housing. Now, they did a large sum in 2008, but that only lasted for a few years, and then after that, it's again back to that same cycle of not having any of these capital items actually looked at. Now, there are repair and maintenance items that are looked at from a day-to-day basis, and the subsidy that they get from WHRC actually receives a subsidy from Manitoba Housing Renewal Corporation. That covers the day-to-day items. It covers the economic rent of the property. By economic rent, it means basically you're not in the red, but you don't have the money to actually put into reserve, and that's where the problem lies. So often, these buildings are neglected, and that is that's the general consensus. If you go into Manitoba housing stock, and I've had the pleasure of going through a lot of Manitoba housing stock, including this building, having worked for Manitoba Housing, the problem is neglect. So these buildings are neglected, unlike what you would see in the private sector, where private sector, you make that conscious decision to actually put that money into reserve, keep the maintenance, keep the capital items up to date, so your building doesn't fall apart. That is the situation that these buildings are in. Now, the other thing is the question of the mortgage itself. Again, these agreements are there for a fixed period of time. They can't be sold off. So in that way, they don't behave like other market properties. So if I was looking at whatever apartment downtown, I was an investor, I could go to that property owner and say, I'm gonna give you X amount of dollars for this building, will you sell it to me? That's not an option that you have with these types of properties until that mortgage is in place, or that agreement is in place with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Essentially can't be sold off. So that is the difference between these types of properties and the market. And I would say that adding a 50-point adjustment to the cap rate that we've suggested for this age group, I don't think we're stretching the truth. I think stretching the truth is actually 5%, because I just don't see how this property could perform at that level. So I'm open for questions.
Mr. Sesser.
Okay, so going to your page 9 of your brief with the breakdown on it, we've got reserve expenditure. You've seen that they haven't indicated any reserve expenditure, 14, 15, or rather 15, 16, 17, yet you added 14,000. And that's because you think that private properties put money away, and that should be counted towards a yearly net operating income.
Sure, so we would, if we didn't, we would be stretching the truth. Because the truth is that in a typical situation, they are putting money into reserve. So we're looking at it from a fee simple perspective. The difference is in the capitalization rate, and that's where we can subjectively question what your cap rate is and say that no, there is additional risk because of these factors. Now that is not the rent itself is what we look at market. So we didn't take the potential rents for this property. That's clear. We've adjusted for them, okay? We've included in expenses in there. We've adjusted for reserve. In fact, we came to very similar conclusions in terms of net operating income. So the difference is essentially is there additional risk to this property? And the city's perspective is that no, there is no additional risk for this property. Our perspective is that yes, there is additional risk for this property.
Just, did you add this reserve expenditure to any other of the properties on this docket today? If you're saying a private investor does do this and it should be calculated
Sure,
in net operating
sure.
income, did you do that
So,
though?
If it's a social housing situation, I would have. If it's not, no, because we expect them to actually do these things down the road. So roof needs repairs, they repair it. Mechanical systems need upgrade, they repair those things. And this is where I'm getting to the point that these are not the things that are being done in this type of situation. They're waiting essentially for federal government handouts for this to happen. And those come sporadically every so often. As I said, the last time that they came around was in 2008. So I don't know when the next time they'll get this. They'll put those funds together. They'll start doing capital work on their portfolio. But it's not done at that routineness that they're done in the private sector.
So you're saying none of the subsidized properties have had work done to them recently?
No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that typically this is what's happening for the portfolio as a whole. So when we're looking at this property, we're looking at social housing. We're saying in general, this is what's happening to these properties. Again, there is the question of what type of tenant is in there. There's high turnover. They're often, the units are often abused. Again, it's not a typical situation. A landlord has some options when they have tenants. These landlords don't have an option. They have that, they have to house these people.
Okay, I won't, we're close on the NOI, so I won't go into that. Just your cap rate study here. I'm just gonna go over this once briefly. You guys have heard it before. So, turn to page 3 of your cap rate study. I have some rebuttal to hand out. Could I ask that we actually go through the rebuttal following the questions of the evidence? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll go to the questions. I'll give this an overall look. We've heard it before.
Would you like me to actually go through the capitalization rate study so we have some perspective?
Yeah, sure. That'd be fair.
If we're gonna rebut, that would probably be appropriate.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Yeah. So if you turn to page 1 of the capitalization rate study for apartments, okay, so the first chart that you see there is the assessor cap rates and Altus age categories, city age categories. So what we're showing here is the difference between what the city does and what we do. Now, in terms of pre-1946, the city has rates between 6.1 and 6.6. Pre-1946, we have rates between 6.25 and 6.6. And so on and so on. Again, we get to 1998 plus, which is the superior locations built most recently within the last 20 years or so. We see cap rates between 4.2 and 5. whereas we have 5.25. And again, the city appears to break down their cap rate age by number of units, less than or equal to 10 units, 11 units to 19 units, and 20 plus units. Apartments with less than 20 units have low cap rates below 5 or 5.3. In addition, there appears to be variations based on location. Neither the city nor office makes any distinction between low-rise or high-rise. So again, that is also an important point, is that there's essentially no difference between a 30-story tower and a 3-story walk-up. Now, the change in cutoff year. Altus changes the cutoff year between 1975 by assessor to 1980. And again, you can see this in pages 91 to 93 from assessor manual showing apartments built by age category. On page 93, the largest number of apartments is the age group 1960 to 1974 with 716 units. And the second highest age group is 1975 to 1997 with 422. Now, we believe that the largest group of apartments was built in the 1970s, and that apartments in that decade are very similar to each other. And this is consistent with what we've seen in terms of funding from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Now, the research that seems to be the big period of funding from the federal government. And again, this is consistent with what we've said. Therefore, it is not reasonable to have a cutoff in the middle of that decade with two different cap rates. One of the differences in the age group is that the standard width bridges and stoves were 24 inches in the 1970s and changed to 30 inches in the 1980s. We believe that all apartments built in the 1970s should have the same cap rate, and the cutoff should be 1980. The assessor has the burden of the proof to show why apartments built between 1975 and 1979 are superior to those built between 1970 and 74, or that there is a significant difference. And this hasn't been established. Also, the increase of apartments built after 1997 was 93 as of January 2015 to 130 as of May 1st, 2017, and 156 as of January 2019, indicating greater pressure for older properties relating to rents, vacancy, level of repair, and maintenance. Again, on page 2, we can see this is the before and after, so we have 2018, 2020. We'll start with the first one, which is before 1946. Assessment, good location, 6. Altus at that time was 6.25. And again, in 2020, before 1946, this time around, it's 6.1 to 6.66. We have 6.25 to 6.66. If we go to category or age group number 4, 1999 plus, 1 to 5 stories, 5. The assessment at that time was 5 for good locations, and we had 5 plus also. 1998 plus, again, this is category 4, again 2020, it's 4.2 to 5, and again we have 5.25. Again, small variations. For 2020, the assessment department has variations depending on the number of units, less than or equal to 10 units, 11 to 19 units, and 20 plus units. The apartments with less than 20 units have low cap rates below 5 or 5.3%. In addition, there appears to be variations based on location. For the 2018 assessment, the assessment department has a premium of 0.75 for North End. The assessor also has a cap rate of 6 for row housing regardless of age. If you turn to page 3, we have the Altus rates based on capitalization rates based on sales. So these are sales obviously prior to the reference date. Altus Group has evaluated the following sales. Again, we've looked at 210 St. Mary's, 43 St. Anne's. I'll let you look at the other ones. Small variations in terms of the stories here, number of units. In terms of what we have here, these are good locations. Again, we've stratified these based on the age. Pre-1946, 6.25 to 6.6, 46 to 59, 6.25, 60 to 79, 6, 80 to 97, 5.75, and 98 plus 5.25. You can see that the average cap rate of the sales that we looked at was 5.91. Newer built 2000 plus, or 2006 plus was 5.38, and the average cap rate for 66 to 74 was 6.15. If you turn to page 4. Now this is information coming from other groups, so we're looking at market evidence provided by reporting agencies and brokerage firms. So we have Collier's unadjusted rates and Collier's adjusted rates here. So Collier's has stratified theirs by high rise and low rise. You can see the Q1 2016 results, Q1 2018, and the change. For Altus, for high rise, the change, or sorry, for Collier's, the unadjusted change from 2018 to from 2016 to 2018 was 0.25%. For low rise, it was 0 to 0.25%. Now CBRE does the things differently. They have high rise A, high rise B, low rise A, and low rise B. So in terms of their high rise B, they have again 0 change from 2016 to 2018. For low rise A, they have no change, and for low rise B, there's no change. And it should be noted that Colliers calculates cap rates by including closing costs, such as land transfer tax. See confirmation in appendix on Colliers pro forma for 3 sales, page 25, 40, and 55. To adjust Colliers cap rates for closing costs, the premium should be 0.1%. The increase in cap rate of 0.25 as per Colliers is due to the increase in mortgage rates by 0.6%. Colliers stated the following in relation to increasing cap rates on page 86. Some investors are waiting to see the efforts of rising interest rates on cap rates by entering the market. If cap rates do increase due to interest rate increases, it's expected that the multifamily market would be the first impacted due to the sector having the lowest spread, cap rate minus interest rate, relative to the retail, office, and industrial sectors. You can go to page 5A, please. You can see some statistics from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So, in terms of units available in 2017, there are 57,408. That produces an overall vacancy of 2.8%, and the average rent is $970. Again, that is looking at the entire apartment universe in Winnipeg. And then on 5B, again, you can see some more statistics taken from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. I don't think we need to get into those. And the following are the basic pro formas. I won't get into those. I think that will be part of the rebuttal package from the assessor. So that is what I have to present on in terms of capitalization rates.
Mr. Assessor, questions on that before you rebut?
Yeah, on page 3, I noted that the R&M per unit for these properties, there's a range from $332 to $1,072, with the majority of the R&M per unit being $750 and below.
If you're looking at what page?
Where? Yeah.
I'm looking at page 3. I've noted the repair maintenance per unit, so we can start on page 6 of your report.
Just to get some clarification here, Because I'm looking at page 3, I'm not really seeing the R and M there.
Yeah, so we'll go through it. Page 6, $332 per unit. Would an investor purchasing this property expect to spend that much?
Sorry, where on page 6 are you?
Page 6, line 27, row 27.
There we are.
Is that a normal level of repair and maintenance?
That is not a normal level of repair and maintenance. However, I think you also have to take a look at the fact that this is only 11 suites here. So you're talking about a much smaller building, much smaller envelope. Some of that is mitigated simply by its smaller size. As the building gets bigger and bigger, more suites, more suite mix, more turnover, that will obviously change, but I don't know, this is not specific, this is not, to answer your question, it's not typical of the market, but again, this is a smaller unit, this is a small walk-up, I assume.
Okay, so page 7, 403, St. Anne's 1,000 per suite, that looks more typical. Mighton at 750 a suite. It says RVA, what does that come from?
Which
RVA?
line? Which line
Well,
are you?
the one line on Mighton, page 8, the column says RVA at the top, there's only one breakdown. Is that an actual reported or is that appraisal?
That is our, RVA is our appraisal wing, yes.
Okay, so that was just an estimation, correct?
No, they probably did an appraisal on it if it's coming from RVA.
Okay. So on page 9, R&M is $432 per suite, 12 Balmoral, line 27. Is that typical, what's the typical range of R&M per unit, maybe without belaboring that?
I would say that there is no typical range. You would say that this is the problem with apartment buildings, is that every building is different, every building is maintained differently. And we find it incredibly hard to find patterns in this, hence the reason that we use site-specific. Now, that was the grounds for the municipal board decision on using site-specific for apartment. So you could have two buildings built in 1972 and they'll have completely different R&M per suite. One may be better maintained than the other. It's really, again, there's too much variation in the market for apartments, and I don't see, I find consistency lacking. So when you ask me what is a typical R&M for a building, that's difficult to answer. This is probably typical for this building, but in comparison to another building, I can't really answer that.
Are there any deferred maintenance with these properties here due to seemingly low R&M?
Well, seemingly low R&M is probably a reflection of two things. Either they are extremely well-maintained buildings, or they are small. And we can look over to page 10 and see the same thing. Again, this is 6 units, not 150.
So you think the amount of units has
As a factor?
a factor on the amount of R&M that's being spent?
I think in a smaller market, depending on the type of owner, I mean, there are obviously situations where you have people labeled as slum landlords who don't put, any money into their buildings. And that's a third possibility. Or it may be that they are well maintained, they're small, and that kind of mitigates a lot of the expenses that you would see in larger buildings. the systems may not be as complex. You won't have the complex mechanical systems that you'll find in larger buildings, security systems, all of those things. You'll have standard water heaters or water heat registers, and which, you know, they're efficient, they last a long time, they're they're not very expensive to maintain, so those could be some of the factors. Again, there's so much variation in the market in terms of, you know, differences in the type of buildings. It's hard to really answer your question with one thumb.
Okay, just so on page 10, just along the top of this. On page 10, line 27, you've got 4 years of repair and maintenance for 215 La Vérendrye. You guys stabilized at 500 a suite, which is 3,000, based on a pro forma, I believe, from a real estate ad. Yet they were reporting the actuals being in and around 2,000 a suite.
Yeah.
But if you averaged the actuals and you used the 2,000 a suite, what kind of effect would that have on the cap rate of this property?
And no doubt it would affect the cap rate. However, again, the person who did this particular situation thought it prudent to actually adjust for that based on what information that they got.
Would the cap rate go up or down if it was 2,000 per suite?
Well, that would eat away at the effective gross income, so the effect would be that it would go down.
Okay. For cap, those are my questions for cap. Now, can I talk about the rebuttal here?
Let's deal with the questions on his evidence first,
property?
then we'll return to the rebuttal. So you've had.
I think I touched on the replacement reserve, and it is mostly cap, so I'm not gonna ask any more questions about this property. And most of our properties here today are on cap, so I ask those questions to be carried forward.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Tenian?
Well, obviously, there's always a lot of discussion on cap. If I look at your page 3, though, I guess because that's basically, are you arguing the cap rates? And obviously, there's a lot of material attached. I haven't studied this, but we've heard a lot about cap rates from your side, which is fine. But if you look at on the right there, it's 9 sales, 3 sales, and 5 sales. And these were good locations. So to me, it's a limited sort of picture of what cap rates like to justify the cap rates. I know the city's using a much larger sample. In their presentation, they give that they've got, these are not, they give a few samples of what they feel it is, but I understand it's on a much larger scale. So when we look at what they have and what you're giving us, it always creates a bit of a challenge. And how reflective is these 9 sales, 3 sales, 5 sales of actual cap rates? Because if I read the top of your page, for the 2020 assessment with reference date of April 18, Hounslow has evaluated the following sales in order to determine cap rates. So this is basically what you're using to justify how you're doing your cap rates. So I'm trying to see how much weight we can put on this.
Well, we're also keeping it relative to what we've done in the past. So we see the change from the last cycle to this cycle, and we're factoring for newer sales that have occurred, and adjusting those categories, or how we stratify the properties. Now, to again answer your questions, we put most of our work into these things. We have no sample to really get from the city in terms of this, so
No,
again,
I know that.
we have the wonderful model, and apparently it's this mythical beast that nobody can question. But I would love to see the model at work and see what it produces. Because when I look at these for sales that are included in here, there was a rebuttal package here on these also. All of those have essentially been, I guess there's something wrong with most of those properties. So if they're giving these as their samples and there's something wrong with each one of these, then it leads me to believe that the model is not doing something right. Now, that is where we actually try and work these things out, make adjustments where we can make adjustments. So in terms of what we've done, I tend to think that at least we can say something about the properties and show it. Now, again, you're the person making the decisions, so you're gonna have to weigh those factors. What I can say is, again, we've shown exactly how we've come up with these values. You can go through the information. If it makes sense, I'll leave that to you.
To us. Not to me. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Davidson?
No, I have no questions.
Just on that last point, you were saying that there's things wrong with each of the city comps.
So I forgot to actually rebuttal on those ones.
Rebuttal on those ones.
Yeah.
Whoa. We got rebuttals on rebuttals, or what?
And part of the problem is that I'm also cognizant of what the assessor is saying. He's not saying that we're depending on these sales here to look at our picture today, okay? So he's right in that. We're not using these for sales in any way to look at the ones that we're looking at today. The cap rate that he's promoting and supporting is model generated. It's not based on these sales here. However, we did have evidence to look at these four, making the point that, again, these are also generated by the model, I assume. I assume? Can I assume that?
Those ones? No, those were taken from actuals.
Okay, so then the assessors took a look at them and, in our opinion, made wrong conclusions.
Okay, then maybe to shorten this up, are you saying that although you have provided these comparables, are you asking us to give those relatively little weight because it only makes sense to use the model figures anyway?
Well, the capitalization rates are model, these are just examples in the market taken from actuals that substantiate the figures in our model. So it shows that we're not out of line. I know last time we didn't have sub 5 caps, and so when you see that this time, well, where does that come from? Well, we have examples using actual stabilization where that actually is the case.
Okay, so you do want us to put a fair bit of weight on what is shown as the average monthly rent per unit on your comps. Is that correct? As
Well, of
opposed to
course.
just taking
Of course.
the model. It's not as if you're dismissing these comps because you're going to the model.
Are you talking
because
about
this
the
is
comps
social
on
housing.
page 6, the cap rate comp?
I'm talking about your page 4 of your submission.
Page 4, oh yeah, these are rent comparables.
Rent comparable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you asking us to give substantial weight to these rent comparables
Yeah,
in support of the model rate that you have picked?
that's the idea, yeah.
Okay, in which case, like if you were gonna tell us, well, don't actually put an awful lot of weight on this, because we're going straight to model anyhow, then there wouldn't be a lot of point in your rebutting it. But if he does want us to put a fair bit of weight on it, then I would wanna hear it.
I think he's talking about the cap rate comps, not the
Cap.
rent comps.
You're talking about the cap rate?
Cap rates.
Okay, but what is,
That's for the cap rates.
that's for the cap rate?
On
yeah.
page 6A.
Sorry, I thought that was for.
No, on page 6, I don't think there's an issue with the rents because again, we came to.
We're pretty close.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, my misunderstanding.
Yeah, so on page 6A of the assessor's brief, they noted 4 sales here for apartments, multifamily. And those are the sales that these these reports pertain to, these rebuttal reports.
I see.
If you want, I can quickly go over.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. The other property would be faster.
As soon as you said for sale,
The first
I was
one
on
is
that
on-
page, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Another book. We've seen those books before, but that's okay.
Is this another information for you?
Yes. Information's always good.
Did you want us to, Huda, did you want us not to write on these?
Yes, because we will be giving them back.
Okay. Okay. I'm just, well, I sometimes, like yesterday, we were asked not to write on this one and this one, and so I'm trying to, because sometimes either the assessor or the appellant don't provide enough copies, so that's the only reason. Okay, I'm just checking that, Mr. Chairman. If you want to write on them, you can.
I think there's enough copies there, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
there's
I
a lot
have
of-
it up
yeah.
here, but sometimes we return all of the extra briefs that you guys give us.
Oh, you mean like the
Yeah,
panel?
yeah.
Okay,
But yeah, I'll grab those from you.
okay,
Okay, I'm just checking.
okay. So we can start on page 2 of the rebuttal. And again, point 1, again, precedent in the municipal board states that we should not consider cap rate derived on a sale where there was intent to renovate. Enclosed in NBM Order A18-431 dated October 29, 2018, which states with the 4 remaining imparables, sufficient concerns were raised by the appellant on 3 of them regarding the purchaser's intent to significantly renovate or alter the structures. The appellant produced evidence from the purchasers which makes the board question the use of purchase price and income information. So sale 1, 191 Roche, that is the first one in the assessor's chart there. Again, the purchaser stated in the assessor's property questionnaire, see appendix, that the property was purchased with intent to renovate and the condition was fair. The 2017 questionnaire shows relatively low rents, including $663 for a 1-bedroom. Point number 2, point number 3, this is 394 Talbot, purchased with intent to renovate. Again, an email from Asteroid, the property manager, before and after the sale states that the property was purchased with intent to renovate. The 2016 questionnaire shows rents of $537 for 1-bedroom, $653 for 2-bedroom. A recent website ad states totally renovated with rents of $800 for 1-bedroom and $900 for 2-bedroom. Sale number 3, 285 Maxwell, purchased with intent to renovate. An email from the purchaser indicates purchase with intent to renovate. It confirms renovations $413,000 and intention to raise rents over 3 years. Also enclosed is 2018 questionnaire and income and expense confirming kitchen and bathroom renovations of $412,790.59. Sale number 4, 333 Ward Street, Altus direct evidence at 5.13%. Altus has full income approach and supporting documents showing a cap rate of 5.13 versus the assessor of 5%. Point number 6, assessor has burden of proof but doesn't show workup or supporting documents, therefore the cap rates should not be considered. And in the appendix, again, we have the municipal board decision or order, and that goes through the first 10 pages. Page 11, we have the sales questionnaire, and this is for 191 Roche. That is page 11 and page 12, up to 14. Page 15, we have 394 Talbot. Again, this is the supporting information for that property. Page 17 is the email concerning 285 Maxwell. Again, I'll just read it carefully for you. This is coming from the management company. I handmade the property was purchased with intent to renovate. The kitchen and bathrooms were renovated for $413,000. This is reflected on the 2018 questionnaire. We are increasing rents over a 3-year period. Blank. And then the last one, which is 285 Maxwell. And that is the information.
Okay.
Questions?
On page 9, the underlined section, the first large paragraph. Sufficient concerns were raised by the appellant on 3 of them regarding the purchaser's intention to significantly renovate. Appellant produced evidence from the purchaser who makes the board question the use of the purchase price and income information. The board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify the property sale. Does that not mean that it's not
It shouldn't
like
be
a hard
used.
line in the sand where, okay, they say they're gonna do some work, all we can is the sale?
What I would say is that you have to take those renovations into account, and that's where the city is missing the point.
Okay, so page 11, we got the sales mailer for Roach. We got a 4.84 cap rate. They said they're gonna do suite upgrades on line 16 here, on page 11. If you turn the page to page 12, on line 32, it does say the property was purchased based on the net operating income, and then the capitalization rate at which they purchased the property at was 5%. We're at 4.84. Does that not support our conclusion?
Well, again, this goes back to the point of whether you should take into account the fact that renovations were about to take place. So the point of the NBN decision is that if you're going to purchase this with the intent to renovate, those things should be taken into account. At the time when this thing is being filled out, they may not necessarily note that, but it's being addressed in the fact that they are actually making these renovations to the property.
There's no date on when they're doing the renovations on line 16, is there? Like, they didn't say when they were gonna do it?
No, but that, again, this is where the website stated totally renovated.
For the rebuttal, I think those are all my questions.
Mr. Tenya?
So that was, you've covered those?
Well, no, I went through his, and
Yes,
then I have my
we
rebuttal.
don't have yours yet.
too.
I have no questions for the appellant. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, I'll wait for
Uh,
further.
At this point, I have no questions.
So let's
either.
take in,
I'm
isn't there?
I'm starting to need a chalkboard with, okay, where are we now?
I think we're going to, okay.
This will be quick. This is
All right.
just-
Your turn.
These are just sales mailers from a couple of the properties in Altus's cap rate study. So I've highlighted it. If you go to page 5, this is for 210 St. Mary's. Altus, in their study, has 6 1/4. They declared they purchased it at 5.5.
Sorry, but which piece of paper are you
This
looking
is
at?
page
What's,
5
what does it
of
look
my
like?
It's rebuttal.
rebuttal.
It's rebuttal, that's the one. we
There.
put up.
That
That's
one.
the
All
one.
right.
Yep.
Back to here.
Okay. Carry on.
So yeah, just page 5, it just shows that they declared 5.5 based on the property's net operating income. Altus has 6 1/4. If you go to the next sales mailer, it's 7.18 each. If you go to the last page, the backside, highlighted on page 7, they're declaring 4.5 using the property's net operating income. Altus is almost a full point. So this is just to illustrate that the purchasers themselves are purchasing the properties
So,
at a much lower rate.
Now, are you aware whether they're actually using the same criteria for adjusting for net operating income, coming up with a cap rate the same way that we do? Because I've seen these before, and again, the differences sometimes are significant in the way they calculate a cap rate versus our calculations. Now, I guess the devil is in the detail. When we look at this property, we're also providing you with how we calculated the cap rate, correct?
You did, yes.
Yeah. So what you're providing me is simply one sheet here with one section of the questionnaire where they note 5.5, but how they got to 5.5 may be slightly different than how we got to 5.5.
Right, and looking at your breakdown, and I appreciate you guys doing that, I would think that when you look at the R&M per unit declared at 210 St. Mary's at $332 per unit, and then 718 Beach at only 500 units, I think a prudent investor would assume a higher expenditure in terms of repair and maintenance, just based on all the properties we've seen come through here at the Border Division. Assuming that that would drive the cap rate down. Now, I don't know if that's the calculation they made. I'm just hypothesizing, but you're correct, I don't have a breakdown of how those numbers came to be. Further questions?
I don't.
Mr. Terrian?
No, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No, thank you.
Me neither. So, that deals with that rebuttal. We have questions.
I think we're
For
done
the-
with this. I hope so. I'm
We have
done.
questions. I have one question that I want to,
I have questions,
all right, well then I'll go to you, Mr. Terrian.
because we haven't had a chance to question the appellant here.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Did you do
Well, that's
that?
what I was thinking.
I
you know,
did.
I thought-
I didn't know if
He
you guys
did, but we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay,
We had a couple of rebuttals.
We had a couple of rebuttals, right? You were
Yeah.
questioning me on the rebuttal last time, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so now
Oh,
we
yeah.
need the
I
rebuttal.
wasn't,
Okay.
I had
Questions on your evidence in chief.
Okay.
I'll have my notes now.
Yeah.
Did you inspect this property?
During this cycle, no, but I have been in this property.
When?
I would say probably about 6 years ago.
6 years ago?
Yeah.
And what would you, based on your information, what's the condition of this building?
I haven't been there currently, so I'm not sure what the condition is right now. So no, I can't answer that.
Okay, and you also mentioned that in 2008, there was a large amount spent.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how much that was and what was done to the building in 2008?
No, not specifically to the building. So the large sum of money came from the federal government as part of a stimulus package. And that was a result of the market crash in 2008. So part of, this is one of those economic tenets that when you are in a recession or heading towards a recession, you start spending to boost that economy. So their answer was to start sending money to the provinces. This was a couple $100 million sent to Manitoba. However, that was to be spread over the entire portfolio, and some of that actually went towards new construction. So to get a level of how much each property got, that's, no, I can't answer that.
But you said a large amount was given. The reason I'm asking that question, that's a 1986 building, and if a large amount was spent in 2008, it could affect the effective year built. So
Yeah.
that's really what I was after, I was trying to get, because that's your evidence.
So
So I'm trying to get a handle on it.
here's the problem, is that when you talk about Manitoba housing portfolio as a whole in the province, it's somewhere in the 35,000 unit neighborhood. So you're talking about $200 million towards 35,000 units. You're not equally going to give them each a certain
But
amount.
you really don't know.
No, nobody, I don't, well, only the people in Manitoba housing, I think, know.
Yeah, okay. The other question is, you mentioned that this is not a building that can be sold. And you talked about the expiry of these agreements are between 35 and 45 years. Do you know when this agreement expires with, because you did raise that, and I
Sure.
was interested if it's not saleable, when? 10 years down the line, or?
I would have to know the agreement in particular. We don't have access to the agreements themselves, but at a minimum, if we're looking simply at the age, we're looking at 2021.
We're looking at about 32 years
Uh,
at this point.
Well, let's see, 19, I'm horrible with the
14 and 18 is 32.
1986 plus 35 is 2021, so that's the earliest.
That's the earliest.
Yeah,
But we don't know.
we don't know.
Okay, the other question was, I've got a few, Mr. Chairman.
Keep going,
I
you're stealing
see.
all my thunder.
We're looking at all the condition of the building, and you did mention that there was no money set aside to improve the place, but I also see here that on average, you're using $1,487 per suite over all these years, as an average, that's your line, I'm sorry, gotta take out my glasses here, 27? And you've stabilized at 1487. Now that's, if that's a 1986 building, and if it's been consistently kept up to speed at 1487, which I think is a reasonable amount based on what I've heard, and this is a masonry building, so there's no exterior painting like on wood and so on. Don't you think that would keep the building in real good condition?
So what I would say is that if you were looking at the private sector and you were looking at 1487 and you saw a well-maintained building, you would probably say that these are very responsible landowners and they're keeping their building well-maintained, everything is good inside this building. What you don't know about these buildings is that there are people making holes in them, there's other crime-associated issues with them, they're neglected, there's high turnover for a specific reason. So that repair and maintenance is, I think, artificially high because of all of this patchwork that they're having to do on each suite every time a new person comes in. And again, these buildings have high turnover. In terms of vacancy, the vacancy is, it can be high, but generally what they do is they work off of a wait list. So once somebody vacates, somebody comes in right away. There's usually not too much of a lag in terms of getting a new tenant in there because there's such high demand for these units. Again, they are providing a social benefit, but they can't pick and choose who they put in these units. So that is.
So there's no test of who's going in there at all?
There's a test on income. If they're rent geared to income, they have to provide some type of income. Usually it's around 30% of, that's what rent geared to income is that they have to pay 30% of their income towards rent. Now, in certain cases, it's fully subsidized. Their rent is fully subsidized. And in those cases, no, they can't pick and choose. Now, this may be a building where they allow families in, or they're exclusively, so this is a mixture of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Yeah. The smaller portions being 3 bedrooms. So typically when you see more family-oriented social housing, it will have a higher mix of the larger units, the 3 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms. So this is kind of, everybody can apply for this, but basically in terms of screening, is that what you're asking, like screening your tenants?
Yeah, I was trying to see, you know, they're not gonna take anybody.
No,
There's gotta be some
No, unfortunately that
bit of
rule,
a test.
no,
No?
they can't, that's something that they can't do.
Except
I mean,
income and maybe
Well-
a criminal record or something, or,
I would say that even that's not a criteria for not allowing them in.
okay.
This is often the last choice that people have before they're homeless, other than shelters. So if you can't get into this type of social housing, then your next choice is either a shelter or the street.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's all I had. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Just a little bit back on repair and maintenance expenditures versus the capital expenditures. Am I correct in understanding that you're not aware whether any of those elements that would be regarded as capital expenditure elements of the building have actually been taken care of since 1986?
No. What I would say is that if you look at the building itself, you can make certain conclusions just by looking at pictures of it, okay?
We're lacking interior pictures though.
We're lacking interior pictures of it. But one of the things that you can see from the picture on page 3 is, again, open windows. Now that right there tells you that there's no air conditioning, so there's no HVAC system in this system in this property. That is typical for market situations of new buildings, is that you will find HVAC systems that control the cold and heat. So this one isn't designed with that. Another thing is that with market buildings, you'll have sometimes large lobbies, you'll have those added features that you pay for in the rent. Sometimes they'll have pools in them, they'll have underground parking. Not with every building, but those are the added features that you get with market apartment buildings. Now, in terms of the design of these buildings, they're very basic designs. You'll have a small front entry, you'll have small laundry facilities, you'll have small locker storage facilities. And again, that is, you're getting essentially the basic minimum.
Then is this electric baseboard heating for the building?
I can't answer that. What I would say is that if it's missing the HVAC system, then you can almost make a conclusion like that, yeah, that it is baseboard heating.
And how is a building like that with that heating, cooling, viewed on the market by an investor?
So an investor is going to look at this and say that, first of all, am I going to have to upgrade the systems? Because it's not going to be efficient. You're going to have people opening up windows in the winter time, letting the heat out, increasing costs of electricity. And again, in the market situation, you wouldn't have to worry about that because the tenant is responsible for those utilities. But this is coming from subsidy, and because those agreements are in place for X number of years, any potential purchaser would be faced with those things, is that you're going to have these things. The utilities will be higher, the people will be opening up the windows in the summertime. They'll have them open all the time simply to let the cool air in. You're going to have the turnover, you're going to have the property damage, all those great things that come with social housing. So they are different than market units. They perform differently, they're built differently. They're Spartan.
Okay, that's all my questions. I think we've come to the end of a long and winding road.
Yes.
Let us take a 5-minute break. Okay, we will resume with 430 Webb Place.
Okay. 19-2436, roll number 13052373000, 430 Webb Place. 14,029,000. Classification is school taxes out, 40 institutional. Actual year build 1988. We don't have an effective age or anything on it. Owner North Quarters Development Corporation, 122 suites, 108 indoor parking spots, 0 outdoor parking spots. Construction class B reinforced concrete frame. Request for income information, page 2. That shows they've been good at handling the mailers. Just glancing ahead, this one looks like the applicant has a higher net operating income duties, so it's predominantly a cap rate. Consideration at this point, so I'm not going to dwell upon our income approach or anything like that. Property is a life lease property, 122 units as per the website. So if you look on, starting on page 9, you see the mailers, the rents they're getting. In order to get in, there's a basic entrance fee. If you look on page 13, you'll see a schedule, it says effective April 1st, 2018. So they have to put in some money, and then they can basically buy their monthly contribution down by contributing more to the place. And that varies as per this schedule based on what sort of suite they get. So it shows in page 16 they have a license in place. Right here, elderly persons housing units as per the Elderly Infirmed Housings Act. That's why they're getting the institutional on it. Page 17 shows that they did some work on it recently, end of September 2017. Some work to remove interior partitions of the main floor lobby area, adding partitions, replace flooring, and new paint. Remove and replace light fixtures, just some maintenance work on it. And then 18, page 18 to the end, shows an ad, and then it shows the interior pictures on page 27. Shows they have various different kinds of finishes, but they're all similar level. They look like they're in good shape. It's good. Wish my kitchen looked like that. So it's cap rate. Cap rate's been modeled as per age, area, and size. We discussed that quite a bit. That's my notes. Thank you.
Questions?
I don't think I have any, because I think we've addressed this. Yeah.
Mr. Teddia?
I just want to look at that permit for a sec. 175,000?
Pardon, what page are you on?
I think the permit here, 175.
Oh, yeah.
I'll look at that a little bit.
Yeah, sure, on page 17.
17?
Yep.
Okay, so that was done and taken out on the 29th of September 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they did a little bit of structural, add new partitions, I see here. No, that's fine, I think I got a handle on it. Thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No questions at this time.
Just a question about ownership. You're showing the owner as North Portage Development Corporation. But I also see Shelter showing up somewhere, Shelter Corporation. Saw that on one of these pages somewhere.
I think that's on the applicant's brief.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. But then Kiwanis is involved as well with the license. What is the relationship between these three parties?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So you have selected as a rent $1,049.85 monthly rent. Model based
Yes.
as opposed to the actuals, because the actuals are bought down by the contributions that people put in, which vary from unit to unit.
Right, we do our properties by model, all our properties by model.
Okay. And just more out of curiosity than anything else, is the right to hold the leasehold interest traded on MLS in this building as it is at least in some other?
I'm not sure that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that one either, so I can't sit here and make something.
Okay, all right. I'm hoping you said, I'm not sure, comma, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You didn't say.
Yeah. No, there's a comment in there.
Okay, good. All right, those are my questions. Mr. Navarro.
I'll ask you to skip to page 10 of my brief, and we can just quickly go over that. Again, we've gone with the actuals, it's produced a slightly higher net operating income. Our effective gross income is $1,515,546. Our expense ratio is 50.8%, giving us a net operating income of $746,377. And we've applied a 5.75 capitalization rate. Again, this is based on the age of the structure. And that produces a value of $12,980,000, rounded down. That's it.
That's it.
Making it as quick as possible.
Yeah, no questions.
No questions? Mr. Teddian?
No, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No.
Neither. So that brings us to 100 the Promenade. Mr. Brokus, when you're ready.
File number 19-2367, roll number 13052481400, 100 Promenade. Assessed value $2,236,000. Institutional school tax exempt. Actual year built 1911, effective year built 1968. 28 suites, 2 outdoor parking spots. Construction class C masonry bearing walls. This property, again, I'm not gonna, they've been good at handing in their mailers. And also for this property, this is an instance where we're identical in terms of net operating income. So capitalization rate is the story on this one. Go to page, so I'll skip ahead, just get you a snapshot of the pictures, passing over the income, because we are in agreement on that. Page 15, that shows the location of the property, the promenade. It's, you can see the cursor over the property that has the red arrow in it. That's the section of the overall building that this wall encompasses. Supportive housing for elderly. That's why it gets the school tax exemption. You'll see pictures, page 15, 16, 17, through 19, just to give you an idea of what the interior looks like. Page 20 just shows what's involved in this place. So you can see from the pictures, though it was built in 1911, it's not original to 1911 anymore. As per age, area, and size, capitalization rate is model at 5.3. We're identical other than capitalism. That's my reason.
Questions?
How is the effective age determined?
Let me check my notes.
Actually, to add to that, when's the last time this property was inspected?
I don't have any notes in regards to a recent inspection, and my notes go back 2004. So whether it was inspected and it wasn't noted, I'm not sure, but not recently would be my answer to that question.
Kellyanne?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No questions.
I have no questions. Mr. Navarro?
Yeah. I'll ask you to turn to page 2 of my presentation. Again, this is side view. I believe that is Colony. So on page 4, we can say that the property actually was renovated in 2001. And you can see by the assessor's pictures and the outside pictures that it's slightly different than what a building would, a building 1911 would be like. So we've assigned a little bit more age onto it, or less age. So the variant age that the property assessment department has assigned is 1968. We're essentially saying that it's more a variant in the 1970s. So if you turn to page 10 of the brief, you can see the incomes are essentially the same. The difference is the capitalization rate. We've assigned a higher capitalization rate based on our categorization of capitalization rates and how we've stratified them based on that age category. So that is the difference in terms of the value. No additions to this. That's my presentation.
Mr. Rokas?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Tinian?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No questions.
Done. Next on our list is 391 Balmoral Street.
Okay, file number 19-2532, roll number 1305-1937,000. 391 Balmoral, Road 2020, April 1st, 18th Matthew State. Assessed value $2,486,000. Class 20 taxable. It's an apartment, one building, 3 stories, actual year built, 1926, effective year built 1950. Property is located between Balmoral and Colony, just north of Portage. 38 suites, 0 outdoor parking spots, 0 indoor parking spots. Similar story on this one. The applicant actually has a higher net operating income than duty, so it's primarily a capitalization rate accession at this point. So, was I able to get pictures on this one? So, looking at the property itself, if you go to my page 7, shows that in 2006, they did some work to the exterior of the property, permitted value, 25,000, exterior alterations, re-insulating, restuccoing the entire exterior of the existing 3-story apartment building. The mailer follows, but I won't dwell on that because we don't have to. Page 9 shows just an ad for this place.
2 page 9s.
2 page 9s? Oh, the second page 9. Shows an ad for this place. It's pulled off the internet. We were looking at current condition. So flipping through page 13 is when the good pictures start. So you see that it's had some work done to it. It's not an original building, 1926, hence the age variant on it. We're talking cap here again.
Questions?
In terms of the capitalization rate, this is obviously model driven.
Yes.
Now, would the model assign a different amount of, would adjust for the high level of bachelor suites in this location?
Yes, that's recognized. It would take the rents from bachelor suites as a strata in relation to the rest, in relation to how much of the total count is.
In your opinion, a capitalization rate of 5%, is that getting quite low in terms of the market?
I think we're 5.3 on this one.
Well, I'm just generalizing, but you're approaching 5. You're at 5.3, yes, but is that on the lower side and more reflective of the market in general, or is that?
Well, I mean,
It's not in an exceptionally good area either, right?
yes, that is, I mean, it's not, there's better areas of the city, for sure.
Okay.
We, on page 4A, we have our sales showing that there are examples of cap rates. 5 and below, there's the sales mailers that have come across in properties past showing 5 and below, so at 5.3, we're not nowhere near the bottom of the range.
Okay, those are my questions.
Mr. Tenian?
Yeah, on the cap. So you're using 5.3, and because I was looking at the permit of 2006, it was not substantial, 25,000. Would that have been the reason why the building was taken from 1926 to 1950?
No.
No?
We have, from 2013, there was a permit for a conversion of a storage room into a bachelor suite. The property was inspected at that time.
Was inspected?
It was inspected in 2013 at that time.
Okay.
And then it was discovered that the interior was renovated. We didn't have permits for those renovations, for the flooring, for the bathroom, for the kitchen. So what was done at that time, seeing, you can tell by the pictures, tons of work. An effective age adjustment was made by the assessor at the time he did that.
So the 2013 inspection moved the building from 1926 to 1950.
Yeah, that's when it was.
But was there any permit at all taken or none?
No, not for the interior upgrades.
Okay, was the upgrade only for that one suite that was converted, or was it, in other words, the pictures here, are they general pictures? over
Yeah,
that
these are
one
general.
suite?
These are general pictures.
These are general pictures?
From like this is, if you go type in this address on the computer now,
Yeah.
you can find these pictures.
Okay.
And this is for more than one suite. You can see, more than one suite on the internet site. I believe I just took these pictures from just one, but they're all done.
I understand they could get distorted now as they're moved around for, sometimes apparently it's not the actuals, it's,
Computer.
well,
rendering.
trying to
Yeah, I've
track,
heard
so, I think it gets a little tricky now when we
Yeah, I've
look
heard
at these
that one.
pictures. But you seem to think these are.
Well, it was inspected in 2013.
Yeah, that was helpful. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I'm just, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little slow, that's all.
Ms. Davidson?
I have none.
I have none. Mr. Navarro?
If you turn to page 2 of my brief, you can see the location of this property. So it's north of Portage and then south of Ellis on Balmoral. Based on the age of the building, again, there have been renovations made to this building that probably haven't been captured by the city. We have the year built as 1950, however, that's probably more reflective of something built in the 1970s, taking in additional renovations to the property. So, we've assigned a 6.25 capitalization rate. However, 6.25 capitalization rate is not solely based on age in this situation. We have adjusted also for the suite mixture, which is heavy on the bachelor suites, and also the location of the property. In our opinion, this is not a good location. And again, if you look at some of the sales that the assessor quoted in their brief, in our opinion, these locations are superior. I don't want to make any additional commentary on terms of the location. It is what it is. We have a difference of opinion, obviously, as to how much it factors into the capitalization rate. I don't think that the assessment has recognized that based on the 5.3% cap rate. And that's simply the difference in opinion. So we're stating that the value is $2,309,580 or $2,310,000 rounded.
Questions?
No questions.
Jerry?
No, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
Just a quick one. You mentioned that your cap rate of 6.25% is based in part on poor location and the preponderance of
So sure.
bachelors.
So there's additional renovations that have been made on this property. Okay, so we tend to think that this property is probably more at the 5.75 range, reflective of a property that was built in the 1970s rather than something that has a variant age of 1950. However, in addition to that, there is also the factor of the suite mixture. It's very heavy on the bachelor side, and that is something that an investor will look at. So an investor will look at a property and say, I want a more even suite mixture, more heavier on the 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms than I would be on the bachelors.
But could someone look at this more site-specific in that its location is perhaps poor if you were not a student at the university and the bachelors are the equivalent of a dorm, so that it's kind of unique because there's very little
Sure,
school
and you're
housing,
gonna pay
student
dorm
housing
prices
in
for
the
that.
area.
Yeah, you're gonna pay
Yeah.
dorm prices, you're not gonna pay what you would get in the marketplace for, even a bachelor suite outside of the downtown. However, we tend to think that we can't ignore the location. It's not in the best location.
So you don't even see it as a plus that you can just run across to the university to school?
Yeah.
Like, it seems to me it's a little bit unique.
It is unique in that it is located close to the University of Winnipeg. However, I think in general the University of Winnipeg is not in the best location either. However, we can't move the university. However, the student housing around the University of Winnipeg tends to be houses surrounding the area. They're not the best locations. Unfortunately, again, the area is what it is. It's high in crime. Every social problem visible is there. So would an investor look at that and say, because I have students nearby, I'm assured a certain amount of income and I can rent them and I have a good investment? Yes, but it's going to be limited by that also.
Okay.
So you're not going to get what you would in the market for a bachelor suite simply because of the location. If you're catering to students, again, you're not going to be able to charge them as much because, they are in increase essentially.
Keep it. Okay, thank you.
And my question would be then, as a follow-up, is, and when there is a vacancy, is this broadly advertised, there's no restrictions by the owner on who is to come in? This is not, and I guess sort of as a follow-up to that, the number of companies that is the owner is not a company that is essentially held by University of Winnipeg.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, what I would say is that you rent to whoever you want to in this situation. So if they can prove that they have the income required to pay the rent, they have the proper references, then you're gonna rent to them. So in that situation, it's not like the social housing that we looked at, which you have to rent to whoever is on the waiting list. This is not a situation.
And it's not effectively a dorm of U of W.
No, no.
Those are all my questions. Thank you. We have up next 275 Colony Street.
Okay, file number 19-2210, 275 Colony, roll number 120915 12000, owned by WHRC. Roll year 2020, April 1st, 2018, reference date 1,021,000. On the valuation of this property, built in 1910, it's a 3-story building. 0 indoor parking, 5 outdoor parking spots, construction class D, wood or steel frame walls. So, for this property, again, it's subsidized. Just glancing ahead, again, the applicant's about $2,000 higher on the net operating income, so we're talking cap again for this one. Location of the property is Colony and St. Mary Avenue.
Are you looking at the same package as?
No, he has a map in his, so I'm just
Oh,
telling you
I
where.
was wondering, I was looking for that photo in
You'll get it.
your information. All right.
Just to give you an idea of where it is. So, we're $2,000 lower than the applicant. On the net operating income side, unfortunately, I do not have a note about any sort of when the last inspection took place, but we do have an age variant on this property. It looks as though cap rate again is what we're talking about here. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes. Now, I'm gonna have to refer to my pictures also on this one. So in terms of the condition of this property, judging from the outside, it doesn't appear that significant renovations have been done to it, although I haven't been inside this building either. So there must have been something to, something must have been done to adjust the variant age on it, correct?
Yes.
You don't know when this was done?
No, it must have been adjusted a while ago. I got notes back in 2009, that predates my time with the department.
Okay. So, based on the location, I mean, this is not that far from the previous property, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the variant age is 1950, so we can safely say that in terms of the variant age, 5.3 is consistent with that variant age of 1950.
Yes.
Okay. Now, above and beyond that, it's not making any other adjustments for anything else, correct?
Age, area, and size is how the cap rate is.
Age, area, and size?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this building is larger than the previous one that we looked at, correct?
You see, no, it's not. They're almost the same size. 391 was gross floor area, 18,332. Gross floor area of 275 Colony is 17,936.
Okay. So those are my questions.
Mr. Tenia?
Yes, what was the 2009 inspection? I don't think you got a chance to finish what you wanted to say on that.
Oh, those are
So
just,
what did that reveal?
oh, those are just notes going back. I don't have any notes for any recent inspection on this
The
property.
2009?
2009, it just shows the person in 2009. Like, they're not all inspection related. It's also like what happened in the appeal, rent rolls that were submitted to the department, wherever they are in our system.
So
I don't have a recent inspection.
So nothing to give us a condition of that building in the 2009 inspection?
Unfortunately, no, I did not get the opportunity. I don't have anywhere near the amount of time to inspect properties.
Yeah.
I'd like to go in there and take a look. But-
Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Davidson?
No questions?
So this is a WHRC property. Again, the rents are subsidized.
Yes.
Income oriented.
I believe so, yes.
You're using just market
Modeled income.
market modeled income. Okay, that's all my questions. Mr. Navarro?
Yep. If you turn to page 9 of the report, we can just go over the workup on it. So in terms of the effective gross income, 142,720. We have an expense ratio of 60.6%, giving us a net operating income of 56,250. That's slightly above the city's rate, and a capitalization rate of 6.75. So based on the age variant, we've assigned 6.25% cap rate on that, and added 50 points because of the WHRC status. So again, that is the same argument that we had on the first property. Do you need me to go into that detail again? No? Okay.
Questions?
Have you inspected this property?
No.
So on page 9, you guys have the level of income like higher than what our model is assigning, giving it a using the 1950 effective age. Do you think it's possible that the property's been renovated on the inside?
Anything is possible, but I can't verify it. I would say that if it's typical of the stock that I've seen from WHRC, it probably hasn't been, but again, that's the generalization based on other WHRC properties that I've inspected.
Do you have any documentation in regards to the restrictive agreements that might be in place on this property?
Restrictive agreements?
Well, you mentioned, I know with the first property, you said that there was issues with them being able to sell it after a certain amount of years. Do you have any documentation for us to see?
The agreements, no. We don't have access to the agreements. We would have to request them from Manitoba Housing because they're the keepers of them. But if it's a WHRC property, it has an agreement.
Okay. And 275 Colony, that's, let me see, this is, where, think it's proximity to Osborne Village? Is it all a benefit, or it would make it more attractive to a potential tenant?
Well, I suppose if it were, I suppose if a potential tenant could get in there, again, this is worked off of a wait list. So if it's, you or I could not rent here.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
You're making an assumption.
I think it's a pretty safe assumption.
Good point.
Mr. Terrier?
No, no, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No, thanks.
Mr. Navarro, do you mind going over your information on page 4 about site-specific? This is a different municipal board order than the one that you briefly touched on previously this morning.
Yes. So this is a blurb that we include in a lot of our evaluations now, and it refers to this particular NBM order that generally we're supposed to use site-specific characteristics for apartment buildings. There are some situations where we can't, simply because there's just not enough information, so we have to go to market. But in most situations where there is available information and we can actually look at 3 to 5 years of of income and expenses, we can properly stabilize them, then we move to the site-specific standard.
And you provided us with that 2018 board order in full in your cap rate study. This predates it. This is 1995. Is there any significant difference between these two orders? Or is just the 2018 is reflecting back on the 1995?
I think the 2018 that we quoted actually had to deal with, if I'm not mistaken, the, I'm gonna look back at it now. Properties bought for the intent to renovate. I believe that's what that NBN order was about, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a slightly different topic.
Bring it up. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 43 Edmonton Street.
All right. File number 19-2541, 43 Edmonton. Rule number 1209-2647,000 is an apartment, 1959, effective year built 1975. 18 suites, 4 outdoor parking spots, conversion class D, water steel frame, exterior walls, assessed value $1,686,000. If you look at page 2, you'll see the request for income information on the property. They handed in a mailer in 2017. So on this property, just glancing ahead, again, it's been on the cap rate issue. We're about $8,000 less in regards to net operating income on this property. So, looking at subject sale history, it looks like there's 2 sales in one day, which is really odd. I don't unfortunately have any notes in regards to this. However, one of these sales is $1, and the other sale is for, of the same day, $516,923. I would suggest it doesn't represent anywhere, it doesn't have any bearing in regards to the value today. So I would ask the board not to consider that. Because, again, income doesn't look like the net operating income is under dispute. I'm not going to go ahead and go into that very much. So just looking at the property itself, if you go to page 10, you'll see the property is located on Edmonton Street, close to Assiniboine. 3-story walk-up, short walk from Assiniboine River, beautiful park, scenic bike trails close to the Forest Market, major bus routes nearby, local shops in the area. Suites have been recently renovated with brand new kitchens that feature full-size stainless steel appliances, new bathrooms. Ideal place students and professionals. You can have a small cat club. Then there's this kind of a breakdown of the amenities and some more information there in regards to on-site laundry. The pictures, page 12 to page 14. When that has more work done to it. There's a $45,000 permit in 2012 for interior alterations, converting a laundry room and storage room into 2 residential units. So it looks like they added some residential units. And the boiler room was converted to a laundry room, so they've been playing with the layout. Page 16, $80,000 permit. So they did some interior alterations to the 2-story, 16-unit building. So we have an age variant of 1975 on it to account for the rentals. Again, this cap rate issue. That's my evidence, thanks.
Questions?
So I'm assuming that in terms of age and size, it's consistent with the other properties that we looked at. However, there's been a 60-point adjustment downward in it. Can we attribute that to the location?
Sorry, a 60-point?
Yeah, so the previous ones had 5.3.
Yeah.
And this one has 4.7.
Well, let's take a look here. So 275 Colony had a 1950 effective age, as did
So it's a
Balmoral.
mixture of everything then, age, size, and location.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we have a greater effective age. Those other properties also had original construction dates. I think it was like 1910 and 1928, one of them was, so it's just newer overall.
Those are my questions.
Mr. Terrio?
Yeah, I had a question on cap rate, because we don't see it very often, so it's part of what you answered to the appendix at 4.7. That's all, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Mr. Navarro?
Yeah. If you turn to page 2 of the property, you can see a picture of it from the outside. An overhead showing its location, so it's slightly east of Kennedy Street, close to Assiniboine Avenue. Now, if you turn to page 7 or 8 of the report, you can see the workup. So in terms of the net operating income, we're slightly higher, $87,290. It is in the capitalization rate. Based on this variant age, we've assigned a capitalization rate of 5.75, giving us a market value of $1,518,091, or $1,518,000. That's our recommendation.
Questions?
Yeah, just one. Do you think this is a good location for an apartment?
I would say that the rents are reflective of that, so it's being recognized in the rent, yeah.
Okay. So I know you adjust upwards on your cap rate for reasons. Do you ever adjust down for good locations?
So in terms of the chart that we have, so the best properties would have a capitalization rate of 5.25, and then they would get progressively move upwards based on the age of the property. Would there be a need to adjust upward or downward? We've suggested upward adjustments based on, for example, north end locations, which are proven. I believe the city also does those adjustments for this.
Yes.
And then there would be the one that we use for social housing, 50 points adjustments. For negative adjustments, we haven't found any reason to adjust negatively. That is the break in the market that we see at 5.25. We don't see any observations that are indicating that they should be lower than that. And again, slight difference of opinion with the city.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Mr. Terry?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
No questions, thanks.
Is this a good location for a property that is mostly bachelor suites?
Is this a good location for a suite that's, for building
For a
this?
property, yeah, it's predominantly bachelor suites.
I would say that most of the properties in this area are not typical of this. They tend to be larger apartment buildings with varied suite mixtures. So I would say that this is not typical of this location.
And your expenses on your page 8, you show your expenses at 70,000, the assessor at 79. You've categorized all of your expenses but didn't put the assessors in. What accounts for the $9,000 difference? Is there any one particular thing?
So theirs is model generated,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't put their expenses in because they just give me a
So
total.
what the one figure?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would there be anything though in what you have included that would be exceptional on the basis of your knowledge of what is included by the assessment?
Well, we're indicating that it has a lower expense ratio, obviously, and you can see the 44% to 50% difference between theirs and ours. I would say that, again, the size of the building, type of property, mainly bachelors, that's probably limiting some of the expenses on this property. It's not gonna have the most complex systems in it. So again, you're not gonna have to spend on that, which are, you know, they say they make the buildings more efficient, but they also add to the operating of it. So I would say that that's probably the reason for it. But I mean, I don't know. Again, the city's is a model generated number, so.
Okay. Thank you. That's my questions. How are we doing? Does anybody need a break for 5 minutes?
Okay, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think we got
Okay.
2 properties left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And carry on.
Yeah.
83 83 Smith Street.
All right, 83 Smith, 19-2039. Roll number 12092499000. That's an apartment. I have a recommendation on this property. The original assessed value was 573,000. So if you go to, well, I'll just talk about the property more. Built in 1899 with an effective year built of 1952 on the property. The property has been renovated. There's, I'll get to that 6 suites, 1 outdoor parking spot only, construction capacity, water steel frame walls. So if we go to page 3, well, actually, let's start at page 7. You'll see that what they are showing here for the most recent mailer is a net operating income of $20,976. Originally, the net operating income on this property was $30,082, generated by the model. That was our model net operating income, which multiplied by a 5.25 cap rate, generated $573,000. That's a significant difference in regards to what is this property is producing for itself. So what I did on page 3 is I looked at our model, and what I did is I bumped the income quality down, which in effect lowers the rent, changes the net operating income, and as a result, the net operating income dropped to $21,330, which is right in line with what the stabilized, well, not stabilized, the 1 year 2017 net operating income of $20,976. The appellant's net operating income is $21,326 or $21,330, so we're virtually identical. This is a case where the model did need to be adjusted, so as it's been adjusted going forward, it'll give a more accurate number. Therefore, running those parameters, it comes up with a reduction to the assessment to $444,000. Last time around, it was $434,000, and it was cut to $389,000. So that number seems to be a lot more reasonable. You can see this in regards to the effective age. You'll go to page 12. It shows an ad. It is a permanent block is located at the heart of Winnipeg on 83 Smith, south of Broadway. It is upgraded and renovated with new appliances, new in-suite laundry, and modern furniture. And then these are it was furnished, so these are furnished suites. It's not run that way anymore. So those rents aren't indicative of unfurnished rentals that is shown in this ad from February of 2015. So that's not what they're getting. Okay, so after the wreck, hopefully he takes it, but probably not. It's cap rate.
Mr. Navarro, how does that wreck look to you?
I would say that it's still a cap rate issue, yeah.
Okay, then, questions?
No, I think we've exhausted this issue. I think we know what the differences are.
Be creative.
The model is obviously going, again, south. And that is based on age, size, location.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't the biggest building, obviously it's a 6-suite apartment building.
Yes.
And 5.25, wouldn't you say that that's more reflective of what I would categorize as investment grade properties rather than something that isn't going to be typically purchased by your large purchasers of apartment buildings? They're not going to go after a property like this, are they?
I wouldn't agree with that. I think it's in a good spot. Like, it's South Broadway, not too far. Bike over, I've taken my bike down that way through Osborne, and I like that spot a lot.
So, in your opinion, your investor who purchases a 150 suite apartment building would see this as a good asset to their portfolio and just.
Well, yeah, I mean, just because it's a small asset doesn't mean it's not a good one.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Mr. Teddy.
Yes, I heard you say that on your original workup, you had used 5 1/4 as a cap rate.
Oh.
And then you're now
4.8.
using 4.80. Is that what you said?
It's 4.80, so let me.
No, here, but I thought in the original, because you've made a rec, but I
Right.
thought you said that your original workup, you had used 5 1/4 on the cap.
Well, I
Did you
take-
say that?
I took that, I was misspeaking there.
You were?
I was looking at the applicant's brief where they have 5 1/4. For buildings, that are in this area, that are, up to 7,999 square feet, ranging from 1946 to 1959, they get a 4.8 cap. So if I was to go, I was just 5.73, which is the original assessment, times 0.048. That means the original net operating income was 27,504, instead of what I stated previously at the beginning of this property, 30,082. That's still too high, it needs to be adjusted.
But was the cap rate used on that workup?
4.8, it was still 4.8.
It was still 4.8?
100%, I was reading
Because
that off the
I-
applicant's brief, and I did notice that right before you asked me, and I was wondering if you were gonna catch me.
Well, I was listening. Okay, that's my only question.
Ms. Davidson?
No questions.
And I have no questions. Mr. Navarro?
Yes. So, if you turn to page 8 of my presentation, you can see the workup on this property. So we have an effective gross income of $54,446. We've assigned an expense ratio of 60.8 for this property, $33,120 in expenses. Net operating income of $21,326, and we've applied a capitalization rate of 6% to this property. Again, we've used a capitalization rate consistent with our Altus capitalization rate study. The only thing I can say about this is it's, again, I just don't see a capitalization rate this low for a property like this. And we're comfortable with 6%, I'm comfortable with 6% on a property like this. That's my position.
Okay. Questions?
No questions.
Mr. Teddy?
No questions?
Ms.
Thank you.
Davidson?
No questions.
None here either. Thank you. That brings us down to 52 Edmonton Street.
Okay, 52 Edmonton. So 52 Edmonton Street, file number 19-2619, roll number 12092670000, assessed value of $2 million on it. For this one, I got the applicant's brief. We actually are in agreement in regards to the capitalization rate on this property. And I reviewed their income and expense mailer. And I went over the repair and maintenance. The building's built in 1927. I think that 1633 is reasonable. I think based on what they've been reporting their income as,
relative to their discounts coming back. I actually, I'm fine with opting to use the applicant's net operating income for the purpose of overall value of $1,803,000. Last time, it was $1,827,000, and it was reduced to $1,723,000. Basically, I am electing it to change it to the applicant's number because we are in agreement in cap rate, and I don't disagree with what they did on this one.
You want to argue that, Mr. Navarro?
Well, I don't know.
Just it'd be a little tougher.
No, I'm okay with this.
All right, any questions from our panel?
Yeah, I just wanna know what number was the last appraisal?
Oh, the last appraisal?
Yeah.
So originally for 2018, it was $1,827,000, and it was reduced to $1,723,000.
Okay.
So this time, $1,803,000. I looked at the workup, everything seems fine, and we take into consideration the discounts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Good.
very much. That concludes the evidential portion of our hearing, and we will carry on with our deliberation.